get this show on the road. Maybe. Okay. Let's see if it comes up here. Up. Edit the privacy. Okay. Well, how is it they start to show the thousands in attendance and the millions more watching? Forget what they say next. Welcome to the WWE. Are you ready? That's right. Are you ready to rumble? All right. I've got a little, we're going to go back and we're going to be in the Sermon on the Mount. And listen, I know this stuff is boring teaching, and I promise you, I try to not be a boring teacher. I really and truly do. It's difficult. Jesus, I want to say this, and then we'll go into our teaching, because I think this is relevant. A verse just came to my mind. Tracy always asks me, where are we going to be at today? And I come up with something new. John chapter 10, let's see. I'm the good shepherd of the sheep. It's John 10:11. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters the flock. He flees because he is a hired hand and does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. You guys have heard that verse 10,487 times, and it's always to somebody else, right? In my mind, I'm always thinking, pastoring has become a business. And do you know the word pastor in the scripture, is really kind of the Greek rendering of the word shepherd. Okay? Shepherd. Now, I promise you, you are going to tend to your own flock, your own sheep, better than you are somebody else's, right? Now, they may pay you to come over and tend their flock. And it always amazes me how it's a move of God when we change flocks. You ever think about that? Have you ever, and guys, I'm here to eat crow. I've eaten plenty of it. I know what my foot tastes like because I've put it in my mouth. I know what crow tastes like with a little salt. It's not too bad. Have you guys ever knew any pastor who they have prayed diligently, him and his wife, and it is absolutely the will of the Lord for them to move to another congregation, which just happens to be twice the size of the one they're at, with a $30,000 raise and a whole lot nicer house, and it's the will of God? Do you guys know anybody? Now, we read these scriptures, and to me, this is the vision that came to me. Even though I would like to wring their necks a lot of the times, I love my kids. But wouldn't it be nice if I came to my kids and I said, you know what, guys? I've prayed and I prayed. I got a better offer. These kids over here, they dress better, they smell better, they clean up, and plus they're going to be paying me. Wouldn't that be something? Because, see, people never think about it this way, do they? They just think about, oh my God, I'm here to serve. Well, as a parent, how would it be if I just said, okay, guys, Morgan, Stevie, Zach, you guys are going to have to pony up. Really? Paul would make the statement, the parents lay up for the children, not the children for the parents. And so I wonder, and I see these things, and I see these posts on Facebook, and I wonder, and I just think, my God, these people, but this is how it is. These people follow these people around like they walk on water, and all they're doing is chasing filthy lucre. That is all they're doing, and the people can't see it. And sometimes to me I get listen, if you guys think, and I just throw this out, that I'm ever doing this for money, y'all need to put me in a straitjacket and send me over to Marion, because I've lost my mind. Because this costs me a whole lot. I'm telling you. I was telling Tracy, I said, I wonder how many other pastors stayed up to 2 o'clock last night and how many got up at 6 o'clock this morning working, to bring you what I am for 10 people. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. Again, this is not about heady information. Let me just tell you this, and I'm going to get this notebook out of the way and get on with our lesson. But this is how the original spirit of the Jesus movement lost its momentum and got institutionalized. The Jesus movement. We had a Jesus movement through John Wilbur and those guys back in the 60s and 70s. But Jesus really began a movement, if you will. A movement. But it got institutionalized. Now, how did we lose the ability to speak truth to power and the empire? Now, see, guys, these are some of the things that we talk about in our teaching on Revelation about empire and all of this stuff. And you see, here in the United States, we don't really think of it as empire, or we've been told so long that let's keep the church and the state separate. Guys, we are to speak truth right into that, honestly. And we were talking about it on Wednesday night, a quarterback from the Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud, is that the right name, Tim? Who, and I think he played for Ohio State, who every time they interview him is always talking, I would like to give thanks to the Lord Jesus Christ. Well, they cut that out of the interviews. For us old guys, it's really not that old, but there was a guy, Tim Tebow, used to pray all the time. He'd always get in and go one knee and hand and pray. And everybody hated his guts. And now they cut C.J. Stroud when he says, first off, I want to thank the Lord Jesus Christ. And they cut it, because they tape delay everything now a minute or two. Why is that? And you think, well, we're fighting the devil, we're fighting them demons and all this other stuff. God's Christianity's done this to itself. It really has. It's done it to itself because it's became institutionalized and it's became a big corporation, a big corporate business. You remember Jesus was all about the money, and remember when Jesus went from Galilee to Jerusalem, you remember he got on his personal helicopter and they flew him in? Y'all remember that? They flew him in, and then remember when he was carrying the cross, he paid other people to carry it for him while he rode in the limo? Y'all don't remember that? Joe remembers it. Yeah, that's in the other Bible. And I know, all of this prosperity junk that is out there. But how did we, the church, lose the ability to speak truth to power and truth to empire? First, you would have to know what power is and what empire is. And guys, empire is our very government. I like on YouTube, when I go on YouTube and I go to this church channel site, the Rhythms of Grace, the first thing that comes up on mine is the strikes that I got against me for the things that I've said, because you're not supposed to speak truth to power. And heck, most people around here don't even want truth anyway. But let me tell you this, and we'll get on with our lesson. In Israel, during Jesus' time, you know what Jesus offered? Jesus offered an experience. That's what we're offering today, is an experience. Not head knowledge, but hey, come and see him. Come and see the man. Come and meet the man. This will change your life. Not going away with, oh my God, I can't believe he. Oh, I never knew that before. No, who cares? They don't do you no good. And sometimes I don't want people to confuse what I'm telling you with heady knowledge, because I want us to be able to go through the deepest, darkest night of the soul and be at peace. And let me tell you something. You don't get there with a 17-year-old mindset. You really don't. It takes something, okay? I'm just thinking of Reagan over there. Reagan's probably going, you don't know nothing, you big dummy. I'm not 17. This is not a put down to Reagan, okay? Thank God for Reagan. She comes here very, very faithfully, and I'm just tickled to death. And I hope she stays. I'm just throwing this out there. Don't be like your big sister and run away. Lauren hears this. You stay. There's something about these mountains. But Jesus offered experience. He offered an experience. Okay, that experience, when it moved to Greece, it became philosophy. And then it moved to Rome, and it became organized religion. As a matter of fact, do you remember what the name, I've told you what Catholic means. Catholic means universal. But in order for this, and if you guys, go back and see this teaching again. I don't know if I covered it well enough, but the Catholics took the name what? Roman Catholic. Because they needed a God who could stomp his foot like Caesar and command power. A God who sat in the heavens with lightning bolts, ready to devour the enemies. Well, guys, we went through the Crusades. If God is for us, he will cause our army to win. Right? I mean, we mutilated and killed millions of people in the name of Jesus. They missed it, guys. They missed it. Still today, we miss it because we think empire is all about strength. I mean, really. I mean, this is empire. And you know, the church wants to line with this principalities and powers and mighty strength. We want, as in the Old Testament, our enemies down with our foot on their throat. That's what we want. And you know, when I go back and look, and you guys, I just tell you what, go check it out. There's a lot of preachers out there, Furtek and all of these guys, and they are all about strength. Fighting enemies, devils, winning these battles, perseverance. They're not about the scandalous love of Jesus Christ. And the scandalous love that says, whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broke to pieces, and whoever this stone falls on, do you guys know it? Ground to powder. We're not about that, because, my God, that don't sell books. That don't sell books, right? What sells books is, I'm fighting Goliath today. Boy, there's an enemy in my life, and they just came in the store, and boy, I'm really going to get them. I've learned this verse, and I'm going to quote it, and I'm going to fight and win this battle. Guys, I'm going to tell you what. I will tell all you guys, there's a book out there. Maybe you guys should read it. I sent it, the audio book to Kathy and Denise, called The Inner Castle by Teresa Avalia. The Inner Castle. It's about these 7 inner castles, and it is absolutely amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Because what do you do, guys, when everybody you know is praying and everybody's praying for a breakthrough and it don't happen? I mean, honestly, we got to be honest about it and say, look, we did all the prayers that we could do and everybody signed a petition and we had 47,000 signatures on it and still Mama died and we had a funeral. What do you do? You know? Because it happens, guys. It happens. So it moved to, Jesus offered an experience. It moved to Greece and became a philosophy. It moved to Rome and became organized religion. It moved then to Europe and became culture. Then it moved to America and became a business. Hence why I can come and I can say, oh, God has answered my prayers. We're moving from this church and they want us to be pastors in this other church down there in Timbuktu. I know where Timbuktu is. I thought it was a made-up place. And it's God's will for us to double our salary and get a big old nicer house. Now, what do you think? I wonder what the people is going to think when they come and pastor those people and they do an outstanding job and they love their pastor and he's connected with family and all this other stuff. When a bigger church calls down in Alabama, what do you think that pastor's going to do? Oh, it's the Lord's will. So here I am with my kids and I'm thinking, you know what, guys? I got a better offer. You guys find somebody else. I'm going, we never think about that, do we? Oh, no, because we have a business mindset. Business mindset. Okay. I tell this guy at work all the time, and we talk a whole lot. And he said, Jim, I just love talking to you. He said, how many people you got come down to your church? Well, on Fridays we usually have 4, 5 maybe. And Sundays we got about twice that many. You know what he says? Ain't no wonder. That's what he said, Tim. He said, it ain't no wonder. He said, I like hearing what you say. You talk with sense. But he said, people don't want to hear sense. They don't want to hear it. Ain't no wonder. Tim's cackling like a chicken over there. All right. Back in Matthew, and I hope you guys will hear this, what I want to say today, because we're going to back up a little bit and go over a couple things I didn't get to go over last week. We were talking about this law. I think last week's message we titled, Fulfill the Law. But then we'll see Jesus change gears and move towards conversation around prayer. Because guys, myself, you, all of us has been taught what? We're no longer under the law. Did we ever even think what that meant? Because honestly, guess what, guys? You were never under the law anyway. I mean, if you want to be right down to it, unless y'all got some Jewish heritage I don't know about, y'all are Gentiles, you were never under the law anyway. So if we were never under the law, then what the heck does it matter if we're learning about the Sermon on the Mount? Who cares? And I'm telling you guys, when you begin to see this, then maybe you can begin to understand why Paul would talk about the curses, no longer under the curses, and grace, and I understand all that. Because I'm telling you what, when I see it, then I compare this to what my thinking was. My thinking was, homie, you didn't have a clue. My friend Eric, homie, when the buzzer goes off, the fries are done. I always go back and I listen. I think, guys, I told you that story to make a point, and I told you a joke and not the point. The point was Eric used to call people, you're the Mercury man. He said, and he called everybody home, and he'd say, homie, you ever try to put your finger on Mercury? Can't do it. Every time you put your finger on it, it moves. And Eric always wanted truth. I want truth. Tell me right now what, and not religious wise, but I want to know where you stand right now. And he's like, man, that's a Mercury man. You can't ever put your finger on him. He's just moving. Isn't that our society today? Nobody wants to be pinned down, whatever. Mercury man. So this relationship with the law, and we think, well, we're not under the law. Does this mean then that since we're not under the law, that you have the right to go take your neighbor's house? I like it. It's bigger. I'm just going to go take it. I invoke the non-law of I can move wherever I want to. Now, I know we say no, but we say, well, thank God we're not under the Ten Commandments. But are we under the Ten Commandments? Are we not under the Ten Commandments? And guys, I will have to say this. Why would God spend 2,000 years in training just to wad it all up and throw it all away? Be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? For me to just wad it up, throw it all away and say, hey, guys, forget everything I ever told you. Really, I only wanted you guys to learn about 4 verses in the Old Testament. The rest of it was just course and fill in space and guitar solos and forget about it. We're moving on. Guys, that would be stupid. And God is wisdom. He is not foolish and stupid. So really, we ought to go back and look at this again, honestly, truthfully, prayerfully, with our hearts open, our minds open, and see what is this Jesus is telling us. Now, last week we looked at Jesus's relationship to the law, and in that context, that law was the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And do you remember what went with that? The oral law. The oral interpretation of those same laws. Now, I hope that, man, there are so many verses. Why would Paul write, you're complete in him? I mean, it's right there in Colossians, right? It's right there. You are complete in him. The Godhead, he's talking about all this stuff. Because, guys, I want to tell you something. I've had to back up, and if you don't believe this, if you don't see this the way that I do, I will simply say this. I pray God open your eyes and your heart and show you. And it brings to my mind certain verses and scriptures. I begin to wonder, why then the day of Pentecost? Why then? If we were in God from the beginning, why Pentecost? I don't know if you guys ever asked these kind of questions. It makes me go back. And I started to put this question on Facebook, but I'm telling you what, I can put videos and everything on Facebook. They don't know, but 5 people see them anyway. So I said, what the heck? Why waste my time? But why would God kick his creation, Adam and Eve, out of the garden and then spend the rest of the time hunting them down? It doesn't make sense. Honestly. Guys, I'm kicking you out of the garden. I drew a line. I put the cherubims up. You're out of here. And now I'm going to spend the rest of my time chasing you down. Surely goodness and mercy. Why do that? Doesn't make sense, guys. It doesn't make sense. Well, Brother Jimmy, it will one of these days in the sweet by and by. It's in the book. See, the oral law and the law, this is one of the big differences between Jewish culture of Jesus' world and some of our modern assumptions when it comes to the Bible. In Jesus' world, law was the rule and the interpretation. What is a good rule if you don't know what it means? So they went together, and they were called fulfilled. Complete. Okay? Paul would use these words. Peter would use these words, telos, perfection. Be ye perfect. And we think, oh, be ye perfect. How am I supposed to be perfect? Well, God looks at me and pretends I'm perfect. No, He don't. God is not. Oh, little Jim, you're so perfect. No, He knows. We got to be real, but see, we approach things with a Western mindset, a Western understanding, throwing all Greek, Jewish tradition out of the window. And here we are trying to make it up as we go along. We don't understand nothing. In Jesus' world of the written law, Torah Shavaktav was always incomplete without interpretation. Was always incomplete without interpretation. Now, what did Jesus come to do? To interpret, to express, to reveal the Father who is love. So if He's love, He really came here to reveal what is love. Because in other words, no man knows the Father save the Son. No man knows the Son save the Father, right? Nobody has ever known this. So, in other words, we have never really known, I'm going to substitute the word here, love, for God, what love is or who God is. We didn't know it. We had our own rule book, our own code book that we said this is it. And we got it right out of Torah. And we said this is it. And then we come over here into the Western church, and you know what we said? Heck with that, wad it up and throw it all away. None of that means nothing. Hey, it does mean something. I could never reconcile the two. So we just had to get rid of it, because that's what we good Western Christians do. Just throw it out, throw the baby and all out. So we need this interpretation. Guess what Jesus came to do? Reveal the Father. Okay, which is another thing for this interpretation. I hope you'll take these teachings, and when you go read the epistles of Paul and of Peter, apply them, because then you can see what they're really talking about. And Torah Shavah Alpeh means it needed to be fulfilled. When Jesus comes on the scene, He will say things like, you have heard it said, don't murder. But I tell you, the real intent behind that law is that you would learn to live at peace, that you would learn to let go of your anger. That's the real intent of the law. Now, let me ask you the question here. Are we not called to fulfill that law, or are we called to say, hey, we're not under that law no more, thank God? No, see, it's not the don't do's, don't murder, it's the do-do's. Yeah, the do-do's. We're going to talk about the do-do's here in a minute. The do-do's means the real intent of that law is I want you to live at peace. What does Jesus say? My peace I leave with you. A peace that passes understanding. And see, if you're living at peace with one another, then my golly, you won't murder. You have heard it said, don't commit adultery. But I tell you, the intent behind that law was that you might stop treating each other as objects to possess. He will say, you have heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But I tell you that is just the beginning, and the ultimate intent behind that law is that we might actually begin to see everyone as our equal. Everyone as our neighbor. Everyone as worthy of God's love, that same love that has been extended to all of us. Right? So don't get caught up in trying to fulfill the letter of the law. Because what does Corinthians tell us? The letter kills. Learn to begin a reaching towards the Spirit that sits behind the law. Because we could say, oh, well, God gave them a ministry of death. Well, it was in a sense, because you know what that law did? That law always pointed to a death. That's what it did. And the whole system of scapegoating, if you can hear this, that the whole system was a system of blood. And what the whole system did was, I could pour out all my anger, all my fears, all my frustration on a lamb, on a goat. How do we do that in today's society? We can pour out all our fears, all our anxieties, all our worries on somebody else's fault. The reason I got it bad is the political situation. The reason I got it bad is because the gas is so much. The reason I got it bad is this person that moved in beside me. The reason I got it bad is the people I have to work with, right? So I can always scapegoat somebody. And it's a ministry of death. It's a ministry of blood. But Jesus comes along to fulfill or give us the real intent of that law, which hasn't gone away, by the way. Because even Paul will say in Romans, the law was holy and just and good. The letter kills. So we're not looking for the letter here. We're looking for the intent or the spirit of the law. Now, we talked about this last week, and I want to go back there because I think looking at some of the specifics of how Jesus interprets certain laws can be foundational for us when we start to move forward with Him. So I want to go back, to Matthew chapter 5, verse 38, 39. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. Let me stop right there just for a second. How have you guys interpreted that? Don't everybody speak up at once. Again, take your time. I know everybody wants to tell me. Get even. You gouge my eye, I gouge yours, right? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You knock my tooth out, stand there, I get to knock your tooth out. Okay. Keep that thought in mind. Verse 39, but I say unto you, do not show opposition against an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other towards him also. Can you put the King James up, baby? I don't have the King James. I can't remember how it's worded. I know the NAS, it says, do not resist. Whosoever, that you resist not. Okay. Opposition, resist. Just leave that one up there, baby. Don't show opposition. Do not resist an evil person. We got to look at what Jesus really means here by do not resist or show opposition to an evil person, because it absolutely does not mean that you allow yourself to be abused, right? Because some people would interpret that way. They got a mean old husband who's a drunk and he beats the crap out of them all the time, and, well, I just got to turn the other cheek. That's not what this verse means. But he says, you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, guys, this comes from Torah. It's right out of the law. It's in Exodus 21, Leviticus 24, Deuteronomy 19. So this is a law that's repeated multiple times. It's a foundational part of Jewish thought. And in fact, man, I'm going to say some things right here. I'll give you guys all kinds of free stuff. Moses, I hope you guys understand, Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, right? Was anybody on the earth before Moses? You guys have to think here, right? Yeah. Yeah, Adam and Eve and Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and we got a lot of Nimrod, and we got a whole lot of people that was on the earth before Moses. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you suppose maybe, just maybe, now this is a side note here, this is the free stuff, the rest of it will cost you money, because I am the good shepherd. No, I'm the hireling, right? Yeah. Do you think there were several other creation stories before Moses wrote Genesis? Do you think there was? Do you think Moses is the first one that invented a creation story? Man, there were civilizations thousands of years before Moses ever came on the scene, and they had their own creation story. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever think that maybe Moses' creation story was a rebuttal to some of the other creation stories? I mean, is Jesus here not making an argument? Does not Paul, we discussed in our Romans, is not Paul making an argument over and over again? You have heard it said, but I say. Are we not making an argument, speaking truth unto power? Because the fact is, this very law, tooth for tooth and eye for an eye, goes back long before the Jewish people, at least all the way back to the Babylonian code of Hammurabi, called the law of retaliation. Because the Babylonian culture was older than the Jewish culture. That's hard for us to believe, isn't it? The Egyptian culture is way older than the Judaic culture. I don't know if you ever think about them things. So the law of retaliation was in effect long before the Jewish. So man, everybody knew an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Everybody knew it. The law of retaliation, according to some, is one of the foundational innovations that allowed human societies to function. Now, what I mean by that, before this, injustice was met with unmitigated violent injustice. So any offense, any infractions could lead to an all-out war. Now, I will say this, these things go on in our society today. And you think, well, no, they don't. You watch it on the news. You know, some country blows up this country's consulate. So what do? Now we're going to have a strike on a certain base. We don't go to war because it's the law of retaliation. You killed 14 of my people. The law of retaliation says we need to kill 14 of your people so that we don't go to all-out war. See, before the law of retaliation, which came in by the Babylonians, you kill one of mine, we're going to kill all of yours. Now, if you will see this is why they make arguments in politics, because one guy gets on and he says, hey, we need to wipe them all off the face of the earth. We need to make in the Middle East a big parking lot. That's not according to even the law of retaliation, the law of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't even, you see what I mean? So that is just brutality. It's just brutality. It's just stupidity, ignorance, trying to be seen as right and just in the sight of men, which we're going to talk about here. But the innovation of proportional retaliation, this is what limited all of that unchecked violence. Okay, so am I bringing this into view a little bit better? It held violence in check. It took our rage and it filtered it through the presumed impartiality of the group. In other words, you took my eye, I cannot kill all your family. I mean, you understand where I'm going here. Because we never approached this from this angle, have we? Never have. It meant that, hey, you knock my tooth out, I cannot commandeer all your land and your wealth and your family from now on. No. Retaliation, law of retaliation. Okay, that's what Jesus is talking about here. Because if someone took your hand and you took their hand, it stopped there. That's it. Justice is met. Pow, it's over. And again, this law was still in effect today. It should be by any normal civilized countries. You accidentally knocked one of our airlines out of the sky, then, reparation, this and this. It keeps us from going to war. It's supposed to be. This goes all the way back to the Babylonians. maybe before. Now, we actually have no record of the Jewish people ever carrying out the law of retaliation as is recorded in the Torah. Did you ever know of anybody who got their eye plucked out by another Jewish person? It's not in the Scripture, is it? Yet it's a law found in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. We know, oh, and you're thinking, well, Samson got his eyes put out. Not by any Jews, he didn't. When they got killed or quartered or whatever, it wasn't by fellow Jews. We don't have any law where Moses says, hey, bring this guy up here, cut his hand off. No, they killed him or that was that. The Jewish people, they did not gouge out eyes, they did not cut off hands, they did not pull out teeth under the guise of justice. They did not do that. And in fact, it would appear that at no point in Jewish history was that law ever applied literally. All of the evidence seems to suggest that the application of the law was always monetary. Y'all know what that means? Money. The meaning, if you injured someone or stole from them, you can see this in the law. What happens if you stole somebody's sheep? Anybody know? You had to pay 4 times. Right? So it was monetary. An eye for an eye would have been, you stole my sheep, I got to give you a sheep back. Right? So they knew this was monetary. So if you injured someone or stole from them or you took a livelihood from them, then you were forced to compensate them. What do we call it today? Pain and suffering, whatever. That means everyone knew what this meant. Everyone knew what the intent was. Everyone understood that the design was to limit the violence of a retaliation. But everyone knew that it had to be interpreted. Of course, God doesn't want us to go around dismembering each other. God wants us to learn how to be fair, even in the face of injustice. So when Jesus comes along with his interpretation, the shocking part isn't that he interprets, because no one in the long history of Judaism had ever taken this law literally. You with me so far? You tracking? 5 by 5 tracking? Okay. The scandalous part is not that Jesus interprets the law. It's how Jesus interprets the law. And that brings us to do not resist or be in opposition to anyone that's evil. Because there Jesus goes on to say, whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. Right? If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. We all know this, right? Hey, we've heard before. Hurry up. Let's get on with it. Tell us. These are all examples of direct nonviolent action. Because if the letter of the law of retaliation was designed to limit the violence of a retaliation, and if the Jewish interpretation of that law was always to move away from physical violence towards an economic deterrent, then Jesus here advocates for a brand new interpretation. One that points us towards social action. Because each of these 3 examples have a very specific meaning for Jesus' audience. Remember his audience in the Sermon on the Mount? People from Decapolis. These were Romans, the people from Galilee. These were the poor folks, the religious hierarchy from Jerusalem. Remember, all these guys are in this audience. In ancient Jewish cultures, you guys probably didn't know this. You're going to learn some heady knowledge. I've got a right hand and I've got a left hand. And everything in Jewish culture was about clean and unclean, right? So if everything is clean or unclean, Guess which hand of mine is clean? Guess which hand is unclean? What? Right hand is what? Which one? Clean. Left hand, unclean. Now this was common in our tradition in Jewish culture. It was common. The right hand, this is kind of brought over today, remember, culture, because who shakes hands with their left hand? Somebody who obviously don't know what's going on, do they? Even if you're a left-handed person, you reach out the right hand. Guys in the military, which hand do we salute? With Tim. When you see a president salute with the left hand, we know right away he ain't got a clue, right? Because you do everything with the right hand. We say it's strength, but it goes back farther. It's the clean hand. Now, why is it the clean hand? Because in Jewish culture, they use the left hand to take care of some bodily hygiene. That's what they use the left hand for. So you would never want to stick out your dirty hand when you was, because if I did that, that would mean I was disrespecting you. Right? I didn't want to disrespect you because you were a fellow Jew and I'm a Jew, so I reach out my clean hand, you reach out your clean hand. It's mutuality here. If I reach out my left hand, I'm saying you're a piece of crap and I have no respect for you because I'm extending to you the unclean. You understand it? These things meant something in this culture. So, right hand is what you would use for eating, greeting, sacrifice, all of these things. But that means if you're going to slap someone on the right cheek with your right hand, it would have to be a backhanded slap. A backhanded slap is not a knockout blow. This is not a open hand. This is a backhanded slap. I would have to do that. It was a way of showing someone that they were beneath you, right? You've seen the old Brits and they got their gloves and they slap somebody over the face. It was a way of demeaning you. And what Jesus is describing here is not a fight, but a form of social degradation. However, if that person then were to turn their left cheek to you, and you know you can't hit them with your left hand because that would be shameful for you, you are forced to at least consider hitting them with the open hand. And as crazy as this might sound in this culture, that forces you to acknowledge their dignity, to see them as an equal, as a human being worthy of your respect. This isn't about allowing yourself to be slapped over and over again. This is about forcing us to confront the assumption that victims are somehow beneath their abusers. To turn your cheek is a way of saying you might act violently towards me, but you may not continue to believe you're entitled to. Guys, that's big. That's big. I'm going to say something that's going to go against everything, and don't run out on me. There's a great saying, and guys, we could. Oh my goodness, how do I want to say this without offending? But it's probably just going to anyway. Without being too scandalous, because I know it says to the Jew first, then the Greek. But let me ask you this: has the great grace of God been extended to all peoples everywhere equally? Yeah. But what's the saying in America? America first. You think that's what God is saying? I don't think so either. But see, this is empire mindset. We got to take care of our own first, And again, these things open your eyes to see all cultures, all people, everywhere as equal in the sight of the Lord. That's a tough one. And like I said, that one doesn't get lots of people coming to your church. It gets people leaving. He goes on to say, if anyone takes your shirt, hand over your coat as well. You guys know all these things, but this is not really about shirts and coats. It's about tunics and cloaks. I'm giving you the Greek word here. And specifically, you know what that was? That was your outer garment. I've got my outer garments on, and don't run out on me. And your undergarments, your underwear. This wasn't, hey, you want my shirt or, my coat, I'll give you my shirt too. Tunics and cloaks. Jesus said if someone tries to sue you and take everything from you, if they are intent on humiliating you, that they would gladly leave you standing in the street in your underwear, then hold your head up, strip down to nothing, hand over everything, and show them how naked their greed has become. And you think, well, how can we do that? Guys, they stripped Jesus naked. Get that in your minds. Yes, they took everything from him. And this is what our greed did. Our greed stripped him of everything. In other words, when the justice system has lost sight of what is just, then he says, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Finally, if someone asks you to go a mile, go 2. And literally during this Roman occupation here that we have going on, a Roman soldier by law could force a non-citizen, anybody else that wasn't a Roman, a Jew, to carry their bags for a mile. It was a law. Literally, that was 1,000 steps. That's the way they looked at it. Now remember, this audience here that Jesus is speaking to included Romans who may have taken advantage of this law, and certainly Jews who had been subjected to it. And now Jesus says unjust laws may try to rob you of your dignity, but that does not mean you give up the right to choose your own steps in this world. All of these examples are set against the word resist or opposition, which in Greek means to violently oppose. And what Jesus is doing here is taking the foundational law of retaliation, this law of retaliation, and now he's saying maybe we can actually do better than simply limiting our retaliation, because that's the bare minimum. And maybe, just maybe, when this finally really sinks in, maybe we become who we were meant to be. And we can do more than limit. We can actually choose nonviolent ways of challenging the injustice that surrounds us. And this is kind of what kills me. And most people, it's like, well, we don't know what to do, so we do nothing. We just go for the status quo, and we just say, well, heck, who cares? We're out of here anyway. And guys, I will say this. The things around us are crumbling right around you. And then maybe till your own house crumbles in, maybe then you will realize, hey, that crazy guy was right. Because it will continue to get worse until we all come to the knowledge, as Paul would say, until we wake up and leave this 17-year-old mindset. Do not resist. Do not show opposition to an evil person. Does not mean you allow that person to continue to abuse you. It means you will never change the world by becoming the worst of it. So instead, you understand the intent of the law. You let God's story become yours. You begin to believe that things actually can be transformed in the world. that the world actually can change. I'm telling you, ask most Christians, 99.9999461% of all Christians. And you think I can't remember that number. 99.999999416%. Play the tape back and you'll see I got the numbers exactly right. They don't believe the world can be transformed. Don't believe it. Here's a statement. I was thinking about this yesterday. We were riding along, and I see, and of course this is a verse. Believe on the Lord. If you'll confess with your mouth and believe on the Lord, you'll be saved. What the heck does that mean? Because I know what it's put in the church. Oh, man, if you'll only believe. Joe, oh, please just believe this. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Joe, finally he comes to the point. And, I almost say, we would have much better preachers if they had a gun. But really, most preachers do have a gun. It's called hell. And I come up to your head, and I put the gun to your head, and I say, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in Jesus? Oh, yeah. Because I don't want to get shot. And then we all celebrate and we go, oh, woo, hey, me and Brother Joe got saved. No, not really. Joe just didn't want to get shot. And people to say and do a whole lot of things under duress. Guys, that's American gospel, the business of the gospel. It's got nothing to do with it. That wasn't Paul's intention. Because I can promise you, believing will come out in your life how you live. And there's no hiding it. No hiding it. How you live. How you live, how you treat other people. That's believing. That's believing. It's not, it's not a mental thing here. Anyway. Believing the world can actually be transformed and then confronting injustice with direct nonviolent action the way that Jesus embodied. In other words, to fulfill the law, you have to be willing to completely reimagine all of it from the ground up. Now, today we move towards the practice that helps us shift our imagination from performing that to actually living out of that intent. And for Jesus, you know what that's called? Prayer. Because what is prayer to us? Now we got all of our acronyms. Oh, it's conversation. Oh, it's begging God. Oh, it's prayer change. It's all of this other stuff. And we see no semblance of prayer and law. You're going to today. Because does not Jesus come right out of this and go right into what we call the Lord's Prayer? Wow. First, let me say something. Riding a bike. Anybody in here not ride a bike? That would probably be a better question to ask. Anybody in here not ever ride a bike? I remember one time I was teaching Shelly how to ride a bike. And Shelly got on the bike, and Shelly got really good. And there's one aspect I forgot to teach her, how to stop. And she had one of them bikes where you got to mash the pedal backwards. You know what I'm talking about? We never could afford one of them bikes with the handles up here, No, them rich people got them kind of bikes. Easy to slam on the pedal backwards and locks the wheel up. Well, Shelly's out riding the bike, and guess what? She begins to holler and whine, and I go out to see where Shelly is, and Shelly's done rode plumb down through the driveway, over the bank, down into the briars. And there she is, bike laid over here, and there she is not moving, and them blackberries and roses was just, yeah. So we got to wade into that stuff, and, you start, and she's like 5 years old. I'm like, oh, my God. We forgot one aspect. I remember one time, and this was one of them little electric bikes. It was down at this guy, old brother Chad Crawford, and he said, man, I got this little battery-powered motorcycle. He said, let's see what old Zach can do. Well, I forgot about Shelly. Put Zach on there, and, Zach, 4 years old, Zach could do anything. He's tough. He got on that bike, boy, and he hit the go button, and he runs straight into the side of the building. Right in, I mean, he ran through the yard. We're like, oh my God, he ain't turning, because we didn't discuss turning. We didn't discuss letting off of it. Zach just rode, and I could just see Zach's kind of head laid back, and wham! I mean, face first into the building. There he is. Me and Brother Chad go running. It's like, yeah. Well, guys, there's a lot that goes on into riding the bike, you know. I mean, you know, you learn through these wrecks and there's training wheels, and you're trying to concentrate, and they tell you, just keep pedaling. And you're thinking, I'm never going to get it, and you're trying to balance, and you're trying to watch where you're going, and you're trying to learn how to stop, and man, there's a whole lot that goes into this, right? But then finally what happens? It just clicks. You just take off, man. You're riding. Next thing you know, you're riding with one hand. Next thing you know, you can drink a pop while riding the bike, and then you can turn it sideways. You can lay it down. You can skid the brakes a little bit and maybe go off a little ramps. I mean, it's just natural, right? It all happens. All the teaching about how to ride a bike, and then all of a sudden it just comes together into this instinctive response. All of a sudden you're just doing it. Your momentum is carrying you, and you're not thinking about any of the rules anymore. You're just riding. And this incredibly complex process of bike riding with all these thousands of unconscious decisions becomes shorthand for something so simple that you can never forget it, because it's like riding a bike, right? Isn't that what they say? You never forget, it's like riding a bike. Now, Jesus never rode a bike. Yet the way that he talks about the intersection of life and faith and law and prayer, he understands this moment where things just click. Matthew chapter 6. Let me read this real quick. Verse 1, take care not to practice your righteousness in the sight of people, to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet for you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, so that they will be praised by people. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Wow. Maybe this will come in view a little bit better, huh? So that your charitable giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. You see, if I was to give you something from my left hand, then I would automatically be thinking that I'm better than you. If I give it to you from my right hand, then I would be thinking we're equal. Oh, something to ponder. And when you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, so that they will be seen by people. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward in full. But as for you, when you pray, go into your inner room, your closet. Close your door and pray to your Father, which is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you are praying, do not use thoughtless repetition as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard because of their many words. So do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask. Then he says, pray then in this way. And I won't go in to read that. So I want to look at this real quick. How do we get from this transition from law and righteousness to prayer and person? And it's interesting to me that Jesus frames the law as having this deeper meaning. And he tells us that law is a story, and that story is meant to shape you. And now he says, be careful not to practice that story. Now remember, righteousness, justice, law, faith, all of these are part of this same vocabulary for Jesus. And he says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others. And I find it compelling because all of this is part of the same argument for Jesus. Don't get caught up on the letter of the law, because the law isn't the point. The law was the pointer that moves you to the direction of the person you were meant to be. Except if that's the case, if the law was always about the person you're becoming, then any attempt to use the law to artificially enhance your social standing is always going to miss the point. Because it takes this external law that Jesus has worked really hard to drive somewhere deep inside of us, and then he puts it back on the surface, and then put it back on the surface of our life. It's like working really hard to learn how to ride a bike, and then spending all your time about how much you love your bicycle shorts. Sure, your bicycle shorts are great, but that's not really the point here, is it? Here, if you listen to the surface of the examples that Jesus uses, you can almost hear him asking, are you interested in becoming the best version of yourself? Are you interested in allowing my story to slowly become your story? Are you interested in learning how to ride for yourself? Or are you just here to look the part? Are you interested in becoming the most marketable version of yourself? This goes back to business, right? Because those are two very different concepts of righteousness. One is the righteousness that just clicks. For all the skills, all the lessons, all the learning falls away. You stop thinking about the rules and you just start to ride the bike. The other is a righteousness where you are constantly consumed with pedals and steer and brake and balance and don't look up and breath and scan for cars and learning the proper hand signals and right turns and left turns. You're always going to wreck. The irony is that constantly trying to perform our righteousness in front of everyone leaves us with very little energy to actually become the person we want to be. In Jesus' day, the kind of public righteousness was defined by adherence to the Mosaical law. That's what Jesus is talking about. Commands to give alms to the poor, to fast, to pray. These would have been some of the most visual, most public displays of loyalty to Torah that you would see regularly in that culture. And a lot of that still exists in our culture, in our world today. But today there's all kinds of little niche communities within which we signal our righteousness to those around us. Now we do this. I say we. There's a term called virtue signaling, and it has become really popular, and it often gets levied against those who want to appear as woke. But the truth is, all across the political spectrum, from every perspective, every position, every posture, all of us are drawn towards signaling our intentions to those we want to impress. We got hats, we got shirts, we got bracelets, all of that stuff that says, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, because I want to impress the niche that I'm in. Right? I want to signal my virtue, my righteousness to the crowd that I'm trying to please. Go on Facebook. Anybody pull it up right now, and I guarantee you'll see 10,000 posts of people signaling their righteousness. It's full of it. I've been there. I've done it myself. We want to be seen amongst our niche as a fit in, as all of these things. We want to impress our group. We do it. We've done it. But Jesus is actually, if that is all you're interested in, a righteousness of rule keeping designed to signal your intentions to those who already agree with you. Remember, 17-year-old mindset, nothing new's coming in. We're doing all of this for a little bit of praise. Well, congratulations, it's yours. You'll get 14 likes. There it is. You got it. 14 likes. I never get 14 likes, but And this is the secret that Jesus has been driving towards from the beginning. That whatever it is you want from your religion, this is what you'll get out of it. And you can see this for how many times he uses the word reward over and over. And he uses this from both sides of the argument. They will have no reward. They will have received their reward. Your Father will reward you. It's actually in there 5 times. And I know it's in the Bible, reward. And what is reward? Reward is go to heaven when you die and a big mansion and all of this stuff. Well, let me tell you something. Earlier in the year, Dad tried to kill us all by planting 1,400 pounds of potatoes. Right? There's a wasp. I don't know where he went, but I was using some kung fu moves again. You know what our reward will be for the potatoes? Planting the potatoes, hoeing the potatoes, and digging the potatoes. Our reward will be the potatoes. Right? We planted corn. Guess what our reward will be? You guys are getting it. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, but we don't get it because our religious business mind can't sell books that way. If I reap what I sow, and you know what? Me and Dad, we planted them stinking potatoes over there in the Big Bottom. You know what? Me and Dad is not going to go to Baptist Valley to get them potatoes. They're going to be right where we planted them. Isn't that amazing? That's just too simple to even get, isn't it? He says reward here, and it's used here like 5 times. It's the normal consequence of your actions. It's not so much a gift, it's what's come to you. The word can also be used for pay or wage. Jesus is saying that with God, your outcomes are tied not to your performance like they are everywhere else. Your outcomes are tied to your intentions. If you want to signal your virtue and impress the people around you, if you want to be praised and looked up to, you might get it, but that's the extent of it. You'll be big and popular. If you want to be transformed, if your intent is to find a new way of being in the world, and if your hope is to discover life within, life surrounding you, moving along through the world with that momentum, then that's exactly what you'll find eventually. You see, generosity can get you some praise, or generosity can free you from greed. Which do you want? Fasting can win you some fans, or fasting can remind you of where your life comes from. Prayer can impress the people listening, or prayer can draw you into solidarity with all those who surround you always. But all of it comes down to what you want out of it. And I will throw this in there with prayer. Do you really think God is not moving until you pray? I would challenge you to rethink that. I would challenge you to rethink that. But all of a sudden, I find myself drawn all the way back to the very beginning of this sermon, the Beatitudes, which Jesus lays out his vision for the world, and he tells us how things could be, where Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart." Why? They shall see God. And looking back, purity there was never something to live up to. Jesus doesn't talk about those who are pure in their righteousness. So it's not the well-performing or the highly praised. It's not those who get it right or understand it or put it all together in exactly the right order. The purity here has nothing to do with your performance. It has everything to do with your heart. I'll paraphrase Jesus. Blessed are those who want nothing more than to discover God, for they will discover him. It's pretty simple, isn't it? And I would ask people, and I would challenge people here, I challenge all of you guys, why do you come? What are you here for? Honestly. Because if we're here for any other reason than to discover God, we are wasting our time. All of us, we just need to go on. Let's go play golf. Let's go fishing. Let's go to the lake. Whatever. Let's just be done with it. We're wasting our time. Hopefully we come here to discover God because He's here, He's in you, He's through you, He's surrounding you even now. And guys, listen, that's not just here. When you walk out into the parking lot, when you go to Walmart's, when you go wherever. If you want some praise, if you want some admiration, if you want someone to look up to you and make you feel good about yourself, if that's what spirituality is for you, then fine, go for it. There's a lot of preachers out there who will give that to you. But just don't be disappointed when that's all there is to it. But if you want to see God, now see, this is the thing here. Those that seek me early shall find me. There's few that be, that travel this, because most people don't even want to see God, or they done been told you can't, or it's not for you. No. I mean, the little woman at the well, I wish you guys would go and listen to that little sermon we put out there on that. Come and see. I got a sermon coming out this week, Philip. You remember Philip? He runs to Nathanael and he says, my God, we have found him, who Moses talked about. I mean, and the prophets talked about, we found him, Jesus of Nazareth. I mean, we found him. And what's Nathanael's response? Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? What's Philip saying? Come and see. See, come and experience. Come and see. Come and see. Come and see. If you want to see God, remember the people that came to Philip again in John chapter 12, I think, and they're pecking on the door, and Philip is there, and they said, Sir, we would see Jesus. And remember what Jesus said, except a corner we follow, and you think, my gosh, Jesus, y'all could have had a bunch more people added to the church. You got to go into this death thing, but that's how you see him. Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it dies, here we go. We're back to this scandalous preaching of the cross. If you want to discover life within you, if you want to stop thinking and start actually enjoying the ride, because that's what Jesus said, that your joy might be full. I look at so many people in the world. How many people do you know have just joy bubbling over in their life? I bet you can't count 3. That just love it. I mean, they get up in the morning. And you know what? We would think those people are on dope. Because nobody is supposed to enjoy life. But I'm telling you, one of the things that Jesus had that drew people to him, because he was a man who enjoyed life. Peter says, when they see a reason for the hope that is in you. Guys, I mean, how many people do you know that you just can't knock the smile off their faces? And I know most church people are the grouchiest, hateful, most worrisome people there are on the face of the earth. And guys, these things ought not be. Do you think the woman at the well that's had 5 husbands? I mean, what does she say? Oh my God, come see a man. If you want to be righteous because you want to connect your breath to the lungs of the universe, and Jesus promises that this is what you will find it on the other side eventually. For Jesus, your experience of religion is shaped not by how good you are at it, but what you want to get out of it. And when taken seriously, I'm going to quit here in just a second. This is an incredibly freeing proposition, because it means that we can finally stop judging ourselves and we can actually start riding the bike the way that we were meant to. So when Jesus finally teaches us to pray, and he pulls all of this together, and he finally drags the law into the conversation with God, his model for prayer is characterized by the invitation to align ourselves and our actions and our thoughts and our intentions to what God is already doing in the world. You see, everything about Jesus' teaching here is about leading us to that moment where we finally stop thinking about the rules and we start to just coast on the momentum of grace. And may you come to know the one who sits at the center of all things, and may God's goodness be born in you so that generosity flows naturally out of you. May trust spring up in you so that prayer spills out of you. May forgiveness surround you so that when the rules fall away, your righteousness might become the natural reward for knowing yourself the way that God loves you. Now let me read this and we're done. Our Father, who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive, I'm reading out of the NIV, for if you forgive other people for their offenses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. This has kind of changed. For thine is the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We'll quit with that.